I'm so excited for today's video. It's not even funny. Hey guys, what's up? It's Belle. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello. And if you've come back, thank you very, very much. Today, guys, it is finally time for our July reading wrap up. I am so excited to film this video for you guys today. This has been by far the most successful month I've ever had, let's say. I think in January I read 11 books, and then the rest of the months I've sort of been like averaging between 2 to 6. But this month has been insane. I don't know what I was on. I think last year I read the same amount of books, but a lot were on my Kindle, and sometimes I think that's a little bit like, not cheating, but I do read a lot quicker on my Kindle. However, I've read a massive stack of books and they were all physical books. So today we are going to be talking about all the books that I read in July. So let's get comfy, let's get crazy, and let's get right on into the video. So you guys, I read a lot of books this month and also a lot of variety. So I thought I would like tell you guys a little bit of statistics before we talk about the books in particular. So this month I read 15 books, including 1 DNF. So 14 books with 1 DNF, which is just insane for me. Like I said, I don't know what was in the waters this month. Let's talk about some statistics. So for our genres this month, I read a total of 8 romance books, 3 romantasy, 1 thriller, 1 dystopian/YA, 1 dark romance, and 1 historical romance. So I've put the statistics up there. And then in terms of my star ratings, you guys can see that little pie chart there. It's crazy. So I had 3 5 stars, 2 4.75s, 1 4.5, 2 4.25s, 4 4 stars, 1 3.75, 1 2.5, and of course the 1 DNF as well. So quite an interesting like variety and I don't know, just like I said, good quality books. If you guys know me well, you'll know that my main like genre is always going to be romance or like dark romance. That's my bread and butter. But this month I just really expanded my horizons and I found some absolute all-time new favorite books. So I think it's really like important to do that as a reader so you don't get pigeonholed, but also like because I feel like sometimes if I stay too long with like just romance, I get really bored and like feel myself maybe going into like a reading slump. So I've got all of the books in front of me here. There are 15. I've also got my reading journal for you guys, and I will insert my spreads as well whilst we're talking about it through like a B-roll, because I'm so happy with some of my reading spreads from this month. So, okay. Without further ado, let's talk about our very first book that I read in July. Okay, so the very first book that I read in this month was Collide, and this is by Belle Cabra. If you guys do follow me on TikTok, I have spoken about this one a little bit. I pretty much say that this is like Icebreaker's hotter, older sister. So this follows Summer and Aiden. So Summer is looking to be a sports psychologist, and basically she's at the point in her college degree where her professor is pretty much like somewhat forcing her to do a research paper on the captain of the ice hockey team. Now, Summer has a very strong dislike for ice hockey in general, which you do find out why when you read the book. So basically she is paired up with Aiden, who is the captain of the hockey team, and he's not really too happy about this either because he just really wants to focus on the game. And he's like, why do I have to, you know, do this with this chick that I don't really know, don't really care about? And the story sort of goes from there. This is your classic, wholesome, silly, funny, spicy, a little bit like heartwarming college sports romance that, like I said, I honestly think is better than Icebreaker. This was so well done, you guys. I'll give you guys the tropes. This was sports ice hockey, reverse grumpy sunshine as well. So like I said, similar to Icebreaker, but I honestly think this was so much better. I loved Aiden. Aiden is one of my all-time like new favorite MMCs. His love languages, I was just insane. Like some of the quotes that I've annotated in here, the way he like speaks about Summer, he's definitely like a words of affirmation guy, and I love a words of affirmation guy. It was just so good. And there was one spicy scene in this that made me lose my mind. And if you've read it, you know it's the bit with the t-shirt, and I was like, and he's like, I can't tell you. You just have to read the book, okay? It's just so good. I loved this book so much. I did end up giving this 4.75 stars, and I think I gave it 2.5 chilies. I gave it 3 chilies, actually. I'm looking at my journal. It was very, very spicy and such a great start to the month. The second book that I read in July was Indigo Ridge, and this is by Devney Perry. So for those who don't know what this story is about, this is a small town romance series. However, I didn't know that this book in particular, the first book, is sort of like a romantic mystery, if that makes sense. So this basically follows Winslow. She's just moved to a small town where she has been made the new chief of police. And the night before she starts her new job, she basically goes to a bar to have a drink to loosen up, and she meets this guy called Griffin, and he sort of thinks that she's out of town for the night. She thinks that he's out of town for the night. So they're basically like, oh, I won't run into this person ever again. They do have a one-night stand. And lo and behold, the next day she realizes that he is part of the Edens family, which is a very influential family in this town. So basically they're always going to be working with each other. And how this story sort of opens is that Griffin does own a farm, and he and one of his, I think it's his cousin or his brother, discover a body in Indigo Ridge. And that then involves Winslow, our chief of police, in his life even more, and the story sort of goes from there. Not only are you invested obviously in the romance for this, but I was so heavily invested in the mystery plot as to what was happening, because this was not the first body that sort of like had turned up in Indigo Ridge. So that was really surprising to me, and it made me like want to read this book even more. Definitely enjoyable if you do like think you might want to dabble in like a mystery thriller, but you want a little bit of romance with it too. I'm definitely excited to read the next one. I gave this book 4 stars and 1.5 chili spices. Yeah, it really surprised me. This is probably like my most surprising read of the month. The next book that I read was one that I was very graciously sent by HarperCollins, and this was Tessa Bailey's brand new book. It is called The Oper Affair. Okay, this is the second book after, I forgot what the first book in this series is called. It's the one about golf. I'm so sorry. The Game Changer, I think I want to say. They are interconnected, so you can read them on their own, which I did. I actually haven't read the first one, but this one follows Tallulah. Like I said, she's still at college. She's looking for a job, and basically she gets hired to be the au pair, or the nanny, for a grumpy single dad who also plays ice hockey, and she is going to be the nanny for his 11 or 12-year-old daughter, Lisa, I believe is the age of his daughter. And basically, like, it's a live-in position, so she's living with him. They sort of help each other, tick some things off each other's list. She wants to do all these crazy things. She's very like adrenaline junkie, you know, adventure seeker, and he just sort of hasn't put himself out there or put himself on the dating scene in a long time. So they sort of help each other accomplish these things. And this was so good, you guys. There is a spicy scene in this where they go to a lake and there's something in the car afterwards, and my jaw was on the floor. I said this a lot if you do follow me on TikTok about this book, that basically it feels so much like the OG Tessa Bailey. Like, you know, It Happened One Summer, My Killer Vacation, Fix Her Up, like those stories that made me, and you know, her writing in those books made me fall in love with her as an author. And I feel like her recent books besides this, they just felt really flat and they fell short because they weren't like this. And this was grumpy single dad, ex-nanny, done so right. I loved this so much. Genuinely, I think it's one of her like new bests or her bests. I think I gave this book 4.5 stars and another 3 chili spices, because the spicy scenes, I was like, yeah, Tessa Bailey's back. Tessa Bailey's back. So for those who are unaware, I do have a book club as well on TikTok. If you don't follow me, I'll put my link here. It is in the description too. This is only a recent thing I've just started doing. So we all sort of got on live one day and we picked this next book, and this was our book club pick for the month. And it was The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, which I now know how to say. It's not Poston, it is Poston. Now, this book is incredibly popular. It is like everywhere at the moment. And basically when I jumped on live and I sort of asked you guys like what you wanted to read, this came up a lot and it was on my TBR. So I said, okay, I've got to give it a go, because I feel like I have not seen one bad review about this book. So I was like, okay, let's do this for book club. It'll be fun to discuss it afterwards to see if everyone's pretty unanimous on their thoughts. For those who haven't heard of The 7-Year Slip, this does follow Clementine. She has just recently inherited an apartment from her late aunt. So her aunt has just passed on. She was very close with her aunt. So she's inherited this apartment. She does work in publishing. She's been working there for the past 7 years, and she has just been tipped off to be like in line for a promotion. And she thinks that that's sort of where she wants to go and what she wants to do with her life. But obviously her aunt passing sort of rocks her She gets the apartment. Her aunt always said that this apartment has magical powers, and Clementine just didn't really believe her until one morning Clementine wakes up in the new apartment and there is a strange man she's never seen before standing in her kitchen, and he is from 7 years in the past. And that's all I'm going to tell you about that, because this book is everything and more. Like, I'm just gonna say right now, this was a 5-star read, and this was my favorite book of this month, and may potentially be my favorite book of this year. The way that Ashley Poston writes about grief in such like a truthful and real way, I can't explain it. Like, if anybody has lost someone close to them or like a loved one, you will see how real this book is about depicting grief. And there were so many moments in this where I was just like so profusely ugly crying that it's not funny. It also plays on this premise of like, you know, sometimes we really do cling to the person we used to be, and we like in our present, we try to be like that. Like, why am I not like that anymore? But it's so important to go, no, that's who I used to be. This is who I am now. And I'm not trying to chase that. And I'm not trying to chase who I think I might be in the future either. And it was stunning. So yeah, this was a 5-star read for me, and it was a 1 chili, I believe. It's pretty closed door, nothing too intense, but I highly recommend if you want something different, but that's just going to teach you a lot about yourself as well and like open your eyes, I would highly, highly, highly recommend The 7-Year Slip. After The 7-Year Slip, I did a 24-hour reading challenge. If you guys haven't seen that video, I'll link it above or in the description as well. Go check that out. I had a lot of fun. I was staying at my aunt's apartment, just house sitting for her. And I read 3 books. I finished the 3rd one like just after the challenge finished, like literally an hour afterwards, but I read 3 books and I will run through them now. So the first book that I read was Savorite, and this is by Tara DeWitt. I haven't read anything by this author before. However, it is like a small town cowboy romance, and that is like my bread and butter. Like, I love that so much. It was nice and short, so I thought, okay, this is going to be exactly up my alley. What are these characters' names? So this book follows Sage. She is a small town country gal. She sort of has always wanted to be a part of this festival that they conduct in their county each year, and she always like feels like her crops and her veggies are like not up to par to be able to win, right? And then we have this new single dad carer. His name's Fisher. He's a chef. He rolls into town because he is starting up a brand new restaurant, and has basically been told that he has to stay here and make this because he's like a Michelin star chef. He's been told that he needs to set this new restaurant up in this town. The two of them meet, and the story sort of goes from there. You can probably tell by how much I don't remember about this plot that I did not like this at all. I gave this book 2.5 stars. The problem that I had with this book here, I did say this a lot in my 24-hour vlog. I felt like both of the leading characters were so unlikable, and I did not connect to their story whatsoever. Our FMC was like this larger than life sunshine girl, but she was always like making these deprecating comments and putting herself down. And then the MMC was just like, that type of guy that's like, oh, like, I'm so damaged, like I can't be with you, like I can't be in a relationship, but like I need you anyways. Like, just really like annoying main characters, and I just felt no connection to this story. So I gave this book 2.5 stars. It was a little bit like funny, I'll give it that, and it had a Bridgerton nod, so yeah, 2.5 stars and 2 chili spices. So when I was like filming that challenge, I was like, okay, I need to completely switch up genres because I can't pull up another romance after that, because it was just like so disappointing. Anyway, the next book that I read during this challenge was finally, because you guys were screaming at me to read this. It was Shatter Me by Tahera Mafi. I hope I'm saying her name right. This has been on my shelf for such a long time. You can see how brown the edges are. I've had this since I was quite young. I used to read a lot of like young adult dystopian, like we all did back in the day, right, when we were youngins. And this is one that just slipped by, I guess, during that time frame in my life. So I never read it, but when I chose my TBR this month, I had one of my besties pick between 2 options, and this was the one. I think my prompt was like a book published before 2015, and this might have been the only one that I had that I haven't read yet. So this book follows Juliet. Basically I don't want to like give too much of this plot away because it could be like spoilers, but basically she has been living in this cell for like 200 and something days or rather, and she hasn't spoken to anybody Like, you start the book knowing that she knows there's something wrong with her, but we don't know what that is. She's been alone for all this time, and then suddenly there's a boy thrown into her cell with her. I'm just going to say that the story sort of goes from there, because I don't want to give you anything about this, because I'm sure you've all heard about this. When I just say, like I said, please go check the vlog out, because this probably had the funniest footage ever of me reading this. Quite literally, I could not stop reading this book. Like, I was jumping around, I was giddy, and I'll quickly say that, like, there is sort of like a lot of knowledge about this floating around the internet because it's so popular. And I sort of know that Aaron Warner is like the internet's boyfriend, like everybody loves him. And so I'm like waiting for him to show up. And then when he showed up, I was like, like, this is gonna be like a Reese and what's his name? Tamlin, like, sort of vibe, because I know like she's sort of with the other guy at the moment, but like I see Aaron Warner and he's this villain and I'm like, oh. I devoured this book and I cannot wait to continue the series. I gave this 4.75 stars as well, and this was more like closed door spice. I think I gave it like a 0.5 because it's young adult, obviously. I cannot wait to continue the series. I went and bought the next two, and I'm sad that I put this off for such a long time because it was magnificent. Okay, and the last book that I read in that 24-hour readathon, because again, I just wanted to keep changing up the genres, was one that was on my TBR that I was so excited to get to. I also didn't mention, you guys, I read every single book on my July TBR except for one. I read every single book. I had like 12 books on my TBR. I read every single book except for one, and that's just like insane because I've never stuck to a TBR before, but I just wanted to say that. However, this particular book I'm about to show you was not on the TBR because I felt like it would have been a good one to read during the challenge. So I finally got to read Butcher and Blackbird, and this is by Brynne Weaver. This is a very popular book. I also think it's just been optioned to become a film, which I don't understand. I do not understand. So basically this book follows Sloane and Rowan. They are both serial unalivers. They meet a few years in the past when the book sort of opens, and they basically devise this little cute little game where they decide that they are going to meet up once every year, and whoever unalives a person first wins this little game that they have, right? But basically these two, like I said, they're serial unalivers. However, the people that they unalive are other serial unalivers. I'm filming this on my phone after like watching back some of this footage. Basically, if I say the K word, I could get demonetized. So I'm not saying that. I'm just going to say serial unaliver. So I'm sorry for the amount of times I say it, but that's the reason why I say it. So just so you know. So they're not just like bad people, right? They're actually trying to rid the world of those people who are real serial unalivers. You catch my drift? This book started out really strong and it was really funny. I did like cringe a little bit at some of the dialogue, like especially during the spicy scenes. I just like got the worst secondhand embarrassment ever. There was a bit where she was like, he's like, pick a safe word, and she's like, oh, chainsaw. And he goes, great job, darling, because I'm about to destroy you. And I couldn't do it. I just was like, no, this ain't it. So I did finish this. It was a nice quick read. I gave it 4 stars and 3 chilies because the spice was insane, but definitely like didn't live up to the hype as much as I thought that it would, because you guys know that I love like dark romance. I love Haunting and Hunting Adeline, the Mind F series, like they're right up my alley. So I thought this was going to be a 5-er, but it just wasn't, unfortunately. Okay, the next book that I read in July was one that I am so happy that I read. If you've been around for a while, you know that I just love Bridgerton with everything that I am. I'm wearing a Colin sweater right now. Let me get on my knees. Hello. I'm wearing a Colin sweater right now. Bridgerton is my thing and I just love Julia Quinn's writing so much. And earlier this year, I actually got to pick up a few of her older titles at a book fair. So the next book that I read this month was Just Like Heaven. And this is the first book in the Smythe Smith quartet, I want to say. I believe that there are 4 books because there's 4 sisters. Now, if you're familiar with the Bridgerton universe, especially the books, I don't think they're in the show. There is another family in the Bridgerton universe called the Smythe Smiths, and they are notoriously known for putting on these horrendous, like musicals every year, right? It's an invitation that goes out every year. The girls put on like a little performance and everybody despises going to them, but they just can't help but go anyways, right? So this book follows Honoria. She is one of the Smith girls and she is in her 3rd year out or 2nd year out, and she has not found a husband yet. I especially love this one too because this was another friends to lovers, brother's best friend. Basically, the story sort of opens with Honoria meeting up with her childhood friend and her brother's best friend, Marcus. And he basically offers to sort of look after her during the season and help her find a husband. Do we not recognize this particular trope? And the story sort of goes from there. And I adored this. You can see the smile on my face. Julia Quinn is so good at writing books that just like are incredibly romantic. They are hilarious. They have like, oh, do you know what else was so good about this book? There was a Colin Bridgerton moment, and I did not know that this book actually takes place in the same timeline as Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. So they were at the Smith musicale and Honoria starts flirting with Colin, and I was like, ah! I just miss my son, so I was so happy to see that in this book. I highly recommend, if you loved Bridgerton and you want to sort of keep reading more Julia Quinn, you can pick up this book. It was just so good and it was so funny. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars and 1 chili spice. The next book that I read was one that y'all was screaming at me for, but it was also like a big challenge for me because I had to read this book before the next book comes out, which I'm hoping to go and pick up today because I pre-ordered it. And it is Caught Up, and this is by Liz Tomford. This is book 3 in the Windy City series. You guys know The Right Move is one of my favorite books of all time. That whole series now, honestly, the whole series is phenomenal. This is book 3 and this follows Kai and Miller. So Kai is on a baseball team. I forgot what it's called. I'm so sorry. Chicago's NBL. There we go. I'm not a sports girly. I'm so sorry. As follows Kai. He has a little boy who just rocked up on his doorstep one day because this girl that he had a fling with basically had the baby, doesn't want him anymore. And his name is Max. And he is a little bubba. He's a little baby. And basically Kai has been going through quite a lot of nannies because he just feels like nobody is good enough or qualified enough to look after his son, right? He wants the best for his son. Okay, basically how the book opens is Kai's having a conversation with his manager and his manager says, I can't believe you fired another nanny on game day. And his manager's like, look, we got to sort this out. We've got to find somebody. Enter Miller, his manager's daughter, who is this freewheeling, not tied down chef who is basically experiencing a lot of burnout right now. She is trying to like create a cookbook or like something for a magazine, like recipes for a magazine, and everything that she is trying to create is failing, right? Every recipe is just like going down the drain, going down the toilet, right? She's just really unsuccessful. So she knows that she's in a rut. And basically one day her father says to the both of them, hey, Miller needs a break. She's great with kids. She's going to be your new nanny. And I'm just going to cry, you guys. We get this incredible single dad and nanny, age gap, boss's daughter, incredible romance. And I just loved this book so much, you guys. Liz Tomford is quickly becoming one of my all-time favorite authors. I just devoured this so quickly. It was beautiful. I will say one special mention to how much I cried my eyes out at the relationship between Max and Miller, who is Kai's little boy, right? They just have the most beautiful relationship. And I just cried so much, okay? This was an easy 5-star for me. It is a new all-time favorite. It was just divine and I loved it. If you feel like you want to pick up a sports romance series, please pick up the Windy City series. I'm going to get play along today because Isaiah, I need your book in my hand and I'm not moving until I finish this book, okay? It was just fantastic. 5 stars, 2.5 chili spices. The next book that I read was a complete change of pace for me. This one was also on my July TBR and I was like, yep, I really want to get around to this because I want to keep reading more romantasy. So the next book that I read was The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. This is book 1 in the Crowns of Nyaxia series and the Nightborn duet, which I now know about. So this book has been floating around for a while. It is extremely popular and it always gets compared to like if the Hunger Games like had a crossover with some vampires, right? Like it's very much those vibes. So this book follows Araya. She has been adopted by the Nightborn King, and his name is Vincent, right? She is a human. So basically the book opens and you see that Vincent actually saves her one day and he brings her back to his palace, and she has been living with him and he has been training her up his entire life to compete in these trials. I forgot what they're called. They are called the Kajari, right? And basically the Kajari is a tournament where all of these vampires fight each other for one lone victor, where this almighty god will grant them one wish. So he's been training his daughter his whole life in order to compete in these games and then hopefully ask this higher presence to turn her into a vampire, because he worries that if he turns her manually that she might like die, and she just wants to be turned without, you know, any of those complications arising, right? So Araya is a very, very, very skilled fighter. She enters this tournament, and in this tournament she meets Rain, who is this sexy, giant, tall, dark red-headed man who is very intrigued by her, and sort of offers up an alliance through the games or through the Kajari. And the story goes from there. This book is 451 pages. I sat in my bed and I read this in a day because it was addictive. You guys know I am not a romantasy girly. Like, there are only a few that I have really loved, like Akatar and Fourth Wing and things like that. This was, for a lack of a better word, phenomenal. I could not stop reading. I was addicted. The spice, everything immaculate. More people need to read this book. I know it's popular, but I feel like it's not as popular as like Akatar and Fourth Wing, and it deserves that particular hype, okay? This book got a 5-star from me and a 2 chili spice rating. It was just insane, you guys. Highly, highly, highly recommend. And because I finished The Serpent and the Wings of Night at like 11:30 at night, I couldn't stop reading it. I was so upset that I didn't have the second one in my hands. So of course, the next morning, what did I do? I got up, I went to Kmart and I bought the second book in the duet, and it is called The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. Basically, how this like series is split up, this is apparently going to be a 6-book series. However, there are going to be 3 duets. So the Serpent and the Wings of Night and the Ashes and the Star-Cursed King are part of the Nightborn duet. And then following this, there's going to be another duet about a different couple and another duet about another couple, but still in the same universe, right? So I can't tell you basically what this is about because it will spoil the ending of The Serpent and the Wings of Night, but it basically is like a continuation of Rain and Araya's story. And again, just couldn't stop reading this. I was obsessed. The tropes, I can't tell you what the tropes are because it's a spoiler, but it was so, so good. Like, I highly recommend both of these. The one thing that I will say about this is like, I'm really sad that their like story is over, because like main story, like I said, I kind of wanted more from this main couple. This was definitely a lot more like world building and like fantasy heavy than the first one, which is understandable, but it was so worth it. I was in tears at the end, and I thought it was such a beautiful, beautiful story. And like the mouth on this man, I got so many quotes highlighted. I just need to tell you like this one quote, and if you don't want the quote spoiler, it's not a spoiler, but if you don't want any quotes, I'll put a timestamp here. Final warning, okay? This man, this is what he says to her. "Let me make you the queen that you are. Let me guard your body, your soul, your heart. Let me spend the rest of my effing pathetic life at your mercy. If I need to die, then let me do it by your hand, please." I love pathetic men. This book got a 4.25 stars and a 2.5 chilies. It was incredible. The next book that I read was The Heart Principle, and this is by Helen Huang. This is the 3rd book in the Kiss Quotient series. And I read those books probably 2 years ago when I first got back into reading, and I really loved them. I love, in particular, The Bride Test. I think that one is really, really good. The one thing that I did forget before I like went into this book again is that all 3 of these books have really, really great autism representation, which is what I love so much about the first 2 books as well. So I did forget that going in. But the premise of this book here is it does follow Anna and Kwan, I think his name's Kwan. So Anna is a violinist, and she's just recently like gone viral on YouTube for performing this incredible song, like a little bit awkwardly, but like it's a strange way to go viral. But she has just gone viral and has been signed to this either like this record or this company, and they want her to like record some songs. However, Anna has just fallen into this slump where like she's unable to continue playing. Like if she's in the middle of like playing a piece and she messes up, she has to start again, and she's been like struggling to actually finish playing a piece all the way through for months. So she's been seeing a therapist about it and sort of like wanting to know and work through these things and get some answers, right? So while she's working through this, how the book sort of opens is she's having a conversation with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend basically says, look, I love you and I want to get married, but before we do get married, I just think we should make sure that we've seen everything we need to see, right? So he's basically saying to her that he wants to go and see other people just to make sure that she's definitely the one for him. Right? I know. So he says, let's see other people for a while and like see how that goes. And then after that, like, if I'm still happy with you, let's get married, right? And Anna is just like so taken aback. She's shocked. Like she enjoys being with this man, but she's like, you know, I thought this was sort of it for me. Like I'm not really gonna go and see anybody else. Like I was happy to just settle for this man. So basically one night, Anna hops on a dating website and basically, or like a dating app, and she says, this is what I'm looking for. I just want to hook up. And then she meets Kwan, who is the cousin or the brother of our other two MMCs from the past two books, so Kai and Michael. Yeah, they meet up and the story goes from there. I have to say that this book was so incredibly touching because there is a side plot in this that involves Anna's father that I found incredibly touching, moving, because I've experienced something similar to that in my own life, and it was just really, really heartfelt. So as much as this was a romance, I really feel like it was more of a self-discovery, self-healing, self-love. You know, like that's how I felt about this book, and I really, truly, truly enjoyed it. I gave this book 4 stars and 2 chili spices. After The Heart Principle, I picked up another romance, and this was also on my July TBR, and this was The Plus Ones by Maisie Eddings. This is a book that I actually tried to pick up last year. I got about 40 pages into it and then just sort of forgot about it. So this book follows Indira. It opens with her walking in on her fiance, I believe, cheating on her with a girl, and there's peanut butter involved. And it really does have such a great opening sort of scene, and I enjoyed that part of it. And then we got this dynamic where her brother's about to get married, and this guy, her fiance, was also in the wedding party. And then, yeah, I'm gonna be honest, that I DNF'd. I DNF'd this book because once I couldn't get through it, second time I couldn't do it. It was taking me like 3 days to read this, and every time I went to pick it up, I just went, nah. I couldn't even tell you like again what sort of happened because I got like 100 pages in and I was like, I can't do this, because I felt like I was about to fall into a reading slump. So unfortunately I DNF'd this. There was just like, except for that opening scene, there was nothing intriguing about this book for me. And I just felt like if I pushed myself to read it that I was gonna fall into a slump. So I said, So unfortunately The Plus One by Maisie Eddings got the DNF for this month. So like I said, you guys, because I was so worried about falling into like a reading slump, I was like, I can't have this because I'm on such a high. I'm doing so good this month. So I said, okay, I've either got to go like reread an old favorite, or I pick up another genre. And the genre I always reach for when I'm in a slump or feel like I'm about to go into a slump is a thriller. So I decided to pick up Never Lie by Frida McFadden. I read The Housemaid 2 months ago and I just loved it. It was such a great introduction to her writing, and this was absolutely no exception. So this book follows Trisha and Ethan. They are a newlywed couple, and when the book opens, they are going to see an open house. So they're going to see this house. However, this house is in the middle of absolutely, you know, nowhere, absolute nowhere. There is no reception, there is no one around, and on their drive up to see this property, they sort of start to realize that there's like a blizzard brewing, right? And when they get to the property, it's sort of like full blown at this point. They get to the house, they're sort of waiting for the agent, but they sort of determine that maybe she's not going to rock up because of this like blizzard and this weather. They go, okay, I think we're sort of stuck here for the night. So they make their way into the house, they find a key under the mat, and they decide we have to stay here for the night. When they do go inside, they realize that this house actually used to belong to a famous author and psychiatrist who went missing a few years ago, and they never found her. So basically the story sort of goes from there. They spend the night in this house and they find a bunch of tapes because like I said, she was a psychiatrist, this lady who lived in the house. They find this bunch of tapes, they start listening to the tapes, and the story sort of unfolds from there. When I tell you guys that I was reading this book, absolutely smashed it. The fact that it was taking me forever to read the +1 and I sat down and read this in a night is crazy. Like, when I tell you guys, I was sitting in my little chair so smug, and I was like, oh yeah, like I know exactly where this is going, like I've got you, Frida, like I'm picking the pieces together, I know what the plot twist is going to be. When we got to the plot twist, I leapt out of my chair, okay? I could not sit still. I literally jumped up and I sat frozen. I was like, oh my God, frozen for like 5 minutes, goosebumps running up my whole body. It was insane. The plot twist in this book had me gagged, okay? It was so good. I highly recommend this book. The only critique that I have about this book is that I did not like the way that it wrapped up. So for that reason, I gave this book 4.25 stars, but please read this book. I like want my mum to read it. It's so good. Like, oh, it was so good. Okay, you guys, and the final book that I read in July was a chunker, and I, for some reason, decided, yep, I'm gonna read this ginormous book. I read When the Moon Hatched, and this is by Sarah A. Parker, which is another book that is slowly becoming very popular. I know that this came out earlier this year and then it got traditionally published, so I'm glad that I got to sort of get my hands on this, and I'm glad that the Australian version is not as thick as the US one that I keep seeing, which is about this chunky and like really short. I also didn't know that this is a New Zealand author, and I think she now lives on the Gold Coast where I am, which is super exciting. So, how do I even describe what this book is? How do I even? This follows Rave, right? And Rave's job is she is an assassin, okay? And there is, I will start this off by saying that this is a very complex world building, fantasy, magic, lore system. Like, in the most incredible way, this is the most high fantasy book that I've probably ever read. And maybe that's like, if you've read this, like maybe not for a lot of people, but like I told you, I don't read a lot of fantasy, I don't read a lot of romantasy, right? So this was very hard for me to comprehend and to wrap my head around. But basically, this follows Rave. She unalives bad people, okay? Let's just say that. And then one day she sort of gets, how do I even describe this? I'm not even gonna explain what this book is about, because in complete honesty, I can't even tell you what this book is about. And that's how I just know that it was not for me. Can I just say, I loved this book. I loved this book, but like I said, the magic system, the fantasy system was too complex for me. And I found myself being more invested in the romance than the fantasy. And I feel like in a romantasy, it needs to have an equal playing field. I need to be just as intrigued in the plot as I am with the romance. Like, think of things like Fourth Wing, Serpent and the Wings of Night, where they are heavy fantasy, but I'm actually intrigued in the story as well as the romance. Whereas this one, I only really wanted to know what was happening with the romance because it was beautiful. This book was so gorgeously, like poetically written, is what I will give it credit to. And it made me cry many times. I am very much attached to a paper crane, like a paper bird called Nee, okay? I'm obsessed, I'm very upset about that, okay? But I just have mixed feelings about the book in general because I actually had to like go on TikTok after I finished this and look up like explanations of the ending because I needed the ending explained to me because I was confused. I definitely think that this is going to be a book that is either something that you will love or you will not love. It's not going to be for everybody. I gave this book 3.75 stars and I gave it 2 chili spices. The spice delivered, I will tell you that. I'll tell you that now. Will I read the second one? Maybe. I don't know. I might just read it because I want to know what happens to the characters. But I just like, for a lot of it, I just felt like it was way too long, too complex for me. And maybe that's just my personal opinion because I know that a lot of people do love books like this, but I did still like it. Does that make sense? Strange way to end the month. Okie dokie guys, that is every single book that I read in July. Thank you guys so much for sticking through to the end of this video if you did. I really appreciate you guys spending some time with me again. How did you guys go in July? I'd love to know what you read. I'd love to have a chat about that and see how you guys went. Speaking to like a couple other of my book besties, it's actually been like a really solid month. Maybe it's just after that halfway point in the year where it's like exciting to, I don't know, read again. I don't know, but let me know how you go. Like I always say, guys, if you don't already, feel free to follow me on TikTok and on Instagram if you would like to. And if you're not already, feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel. The August TBR video will be coming right away, so pretty much next. I'm going to be filming it straight after this one here, and I'm so excited because August is my birthday month, so just best believe I'm going to be incredibly annoying and obnoxious because I'm a Leo through and through, and I'm so excited for that video. So thank you guys so much again, wherever you are in the world. I hope you're having a lovely day or a lovely night, and I will see you all next time. Bye!